So Monster Hunter is full of dozens of monsters that are like really crazy, right? Well, there's a couple of these guys who are just stupid strong, really powerful, just really big, and they're in a class all their own. And that's true. These guys are Elder Dragons. Now, they're called Elder Dragons simply because they do not fit into any other classification. And also, they could very well just be actual dragons, monsters with 4 appendages and a set of wings. Now, these guys are some of the best in the entire series, the strongest in the entire series, and for the most part, the end game bosses in almost every game. We today are going to list the top 10 best Elder Dragons in the entire main series Monster Hunter games. We're not accounting for Frontier or Online simply because they're so niche, and for the most part, no one has real access to those games outside of the respective countries in which those games are played. So with that being said, everyone, let's dive right into some old dusty bones. Coming in at number 10, we have the Sidious. He's the final boss Elder Dragon for Monster Hunter Tri and 3 Ultimate in the village. Granted, for 3 Ultimate you do have high rank quests as well, so he's the first for the 3U. Regardless though, he makes this list because he has the power to actually cause tremendous earthquakes by jamming his giant horn into the ground, threatening to actually sink Moga Village underwater, similar to that of like Atlantis and things like that. However, he is the final boss, like I said, and the best thing about him is the fact that he's completely underwater. So in order to actually fight this guy, you have to really work on your underwater fighting skills. And as for the 3rd generation introducing underwater fighting, it's a good test to actually see how good you actually are. For that, my man makes the list. Now for Gen's little cousin, or should I say bigger, because he's actually technically bigger than Gen Moran, the Dairen Moran. This guy, he's a massive hulking beast of a whale type monster who skirts through the sands on the Great Desert. Now he makes the list because of his overwhelming size, and the power behind that size. He's a monster who loves to throw his weight around. So for the most part, his weight, his massive size is his main weapon. But when that necessarily doesn't work, he will use a newly developed, I would like to say, beam of sorts, where he concentrates a large, deep, heavy concentration of sand and shoots it out of his mouth in a projectile fashion. For the most part, you only get to see this when you happen to fight him in his final showdown state, but if you get hit with that particular beam, it's quite the damaging attack. But these monsters, they're known to actually attack cities and villages and things like that, so they leave it up to hunters themselves to go out there and hopefully save them from these guys. If they do come back victorious, they come back with tremendous amounts of loot because he himself has ore deposits on his back that can use to give money to the surrounding villages. So my man makes the list because he's just that dope. Up next we have the Teostra. Now the Teostra is one dragon out of a set of triplets. The reason we chose him, however, is because he's the strongest out of the 3, the other 2 being Chameleos and Cushula de Ora. Now, the Teostra, he's one bad mamma jamma. He controls fire to an utmost ridiculous degree. One of the things that people really know him for is that he has a very insanely strong attack, noted as the Supernova. So much so, and so strong indeed, and he does it at such random intervals that people actually had to figure out the timing in between which he would do it, and then schedule the timing down, and then alert people who are fighting with them to know when he's actually going to do it or not. But he's more than just the Supernova. Teostra is actually one of the few monsters in Monster Hunter who actually have a fire breath. Most monsters, when they shoot fire, it's always in the form of a fireball. Teostra actually has a fire breath, which is really cool. As of late, he's given the new ability for blast. He can actually expel blast powder particles from his body and ignite these particles by biting down with his teeth. If you're caught in the blast, it's tremendous damage for you. So because of his powerful attacks and his wide variety in which you can do them in, my man makes the list. Next up, we have GOG Museos. He's the final boss in 4 Ultimate. Now, the cool thing about this guy is that he actually has a Dragonator on his back. The Dragonator is there simply because his entire body is encased with a very sticky tar, and he likes to eat gunpowder. So the lore is that he was actually eating gunpowder in a warehouse belonging to regular hunters, and I'm guessing the Dragonator adhered to his back once he was in there because of the tar. Now the cool thing about him is that he can use this said tar to throw traps on the ground to get you in case then you have to swing sticks, press buttons to get free. He can also take the same tar and superheat it for explosive attacks as well. So he has all sorts of different attacks. He can fly. He's actually very agile for his size in terms of actually just moving around and for flight. One of the best things about him though is that he has 2 phases. The original phase isn't really too bad, but his second phase he gets really mad, flies in the air, lets off a barrage of flaming attacks. I mean, it's kind of nutty. He does massive damage and all his gear is really good as well. So he's the full package. I mean, he's nothing to play with, and because of it he makes the list. Coming in at the number 6 spot, we have the Rusticcushla. Now, one thing I want to note to you guys about the Rusticcush is that he himself is not a subspecies. He's a variant. A variant is just a monster who is standard, who is going through certain phases in their life. Rusticcush is just a standard Cushla whose skin has rusted because Kush himself is a metal dragon. He's attempting to mold his skin to start anew. But however, when they go into this particular phase, they become highly aggressive, taking everything that they already do have as a standard Cushla and powering it up a little bit more. They will attack any and all while it's trying to shed its skin, so that's why we're fighting it now. Even though it may look as if Kush himself has control over ice, that is not the case. His main function is wind. He does have ice weapons, and he will tend to give you ice blight, but you have to understand this is simply because he is working with frigid wind. Speaking of wind, we cannot forget that Cushla can cover himself in a wind barrier, making it very hard for hunters to approach. And we also know that when it is enraged, it will make up what is known as a black wind barrier, making it extremely hard to approach. Now the Rusticcush does this a bit more often due to him being more aggressive and for the most part enraged 90% of the time. So the ability to manipulate and create massive winds that can actually level whole towns and villages, yeah, Rusticcush is kinda OP and very strong in terms of an Elder Dragon. For that, my man got to make the list. Omatsu is the final Elder Dragon in Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. He's a very, very, very tough fight, a beautiful monster, and also one of the strongest monsters in all of Monster Hunter. It commands its patron element, water, stronger than any other monster commanding their own. In my opinion, the true king of the skies, simply because it actually never touches the ground. Even if you set it to sleep or even quote-unquote knock it down, it doesn't actually touch the ground, it kind of floats. The only time you actually really see it touch the ground is if it's dead. But outside of that, it floats consistently all the time. It has vestigial arms and legs simply because it doesn't touch the ground anymore. But it doesn't matter. It is a dragon who can swim through the sky. Think about that, swimming through the sky, commanding monsoons and storms with the power to destroy the entire world. Although he's not one of my favorite monsters in Monster Hunter, he's actually one of my least favorite, truth be told. You have to really respect his power. He's insanely strong, like I said, commanding weather systems, monsoons, storms, tornadoes, etc. Making our way to godlike territory, we are now going to talk about the Sha Dalaman. Now, one thing I should really note for you guys is the Sha Dalaman, even though it says he's a subspecies, he's actually just a regular Dalamander who had just molted his skin. And you know, much like snakes when they first molt their skin, their coloring is a little bit different. Same goes for the Sha Dalaman. Now, one thing to note though, simply because he molted his skin, he has gone through a huge change in his metabolism and cannot control himself too well. And because of that, he can either go from really rock hard to actually very vulnerable to hit. One thing to actually note from this though, is that because he can go through such drastic changes in heat and cold, that he actually has certain attacks that actually rend the entire ground into a molten state and will hurt you if you just happen to step on it. Now, earlier I said godlike territory, and I really mean that. Sha Dalaman is, for the most part, in Monster Hunter lore, revered as a god, a creator of sorts. Actually, if you read some of his equipment and gear, in the description it talks about how he created the earth by drawing the horizon with his body. Now, if we're actually dealing with a being with that sort of power, we're not 100% sure about. However though, in the legends it talks of him being this strong, and because of that we have to put him on the list. He's probably that strong really, but we don't know that. The Electron is one of my least favorite monsters, but however, you cannot deny its power. For the most part, it's no secret that everyone knows that the Electron himself has the ability to pretty much manipulate all elements. However, he is in a very unstable state, and if able to reach his full potential, who knows what he could do. He can probably destroy the entire world. But as it stands, because he doesn't actually have the full control over all of his faculties, I have to put him a little bit lower on the list. Now, if you know what I'm talking about, Electron is one of the few, if not anything, the only monster in the game that actually has the command over multiple elements. Some monsters may have one or two, but this guy has like all of them. The only one we've yet to actually see him emit was water. That's probably for the most part, due in part that, I don't know, he might not have the same means to like create water or something like that. We don't know this for sure, but he can control ice, fire, electricity, and dragon. Because he has so many of these elements in his body and he's just completely unstable with it, he is a threat to all environments everywhere. So even other Elder Dragons themselves kind of give him a wide berth because they don't know what he's gonna do. Imagine someone who's just overly sporadic with too much power. That's the best way to describe an Electron. Because he's so crazy like that, we gotta put him on the list. Sometimes regarded as the Black Devil of the Sea, the Dire Moralis is also another godlike type monster who, for many purposes, and people really believe him to actually be the end of all of Monster Hunter, or even in some cases the creation of it all, who knows. But the power and the legends and the lore really speak for itself, because when you actually go to fight the guy, he's nothing to play with either. Now you actually get to fight him both on land and underwater, being the only Elder Dragon to actually allow you to do so. An interesting fact about this guy being underwater is the fact that he has to go in water to regulate his body temperature, because those swirling balls you see on his body is actually pools of magma. Correct. Dire Moralis shoots magma from either his wings, or he can rain meteors from the sky. He has full control over fire for the most part, because he's able to actually summon meteors from the sky. Like, what is that? What kind of display of power is that? Where are they coming from? Surely I hope they're not coming from space, because if so, he can potentially be the end of the world as we know it. Regardless, let's get back to it. Dire Moralis is very, very strong, very powerful monster, wields amazing gear, and the fight itself is a very tough one at that. We believe him to be related to the Fatalis family, but his physiology kind of leads that to kind of not really be too true. He is drastically different physically than that of the Norman Fatalis, but there's a lot of similarities to them, so it is undeniable. Granted though, we'll say that he is part of the family for now, but he is definitely his own beast, and wildly strong nonetheless. Coming in at number 1, we have the strongest Elder Dragon of them all, Yukon Los.
What's that? Yukon Los not the Elder Dragon? Since when? Oh, he fit in the flying weapon category? So he's not an Elder Dragon. So he's not number 1. What?
Okay guys, let's back this up. Coming in the number 1 spot, we have the entire Fatalis family. Now I know what you're thinking, Dak, why all 3? Well, you all know who these guys are. They're the most iconic Elder Dragons in all of Monster Hunter, and with that iconicness comes the reason why they are iconic. They're immensely powerful, and this list is based on the power of these monsters indeed. So you cannot knock at the fact that regular Fatalis, White Fatalis, and Crimson Fatalis are all exceedingly strong. Don't want to take my word for it? Fine. Fatalis once destroyed the strongest kingdom in all of the Monster Hunter universe by itself. Not only did it do that, it got so mad at the hunters hunting monsters closer to extinction due to scientific records and everything like that, or scientific research rather, that it hunted hunters and then wore the hunters as armor, as a sign to show that how he didn't like how we would hunt them for their armor. Now, I don't know about you, but Fatalis is nuts, and not just Fatalis himself, the entire family is crazy strong, but that's the reason why they're number 1, guys. But anyway, it's been your boy Dak908, aka the Dig Dug himself. Thank you guys so much for coming and watching today. Let me know what you liked in the video, let me know what you didn't like, and of course, may the desire sense of forever be in your favor. Oh, last note, what do you want to see next? What is the next top 10 video you would like to see? And I'll make it. Take care.